Welcome, friends. Sorry for the delay. Good to see people gathering.
Hello.
Oh, Bernhardt, I'm just about to come on. Nice to see you there. Just one moment. We will start, friends, in a few minutes.
Okay.
Just a couple minutes. Oh, it's wonderful to be here.
Hello, Pino. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear somebody, yes. Stuart is about to start in a few minutes, he said, so we're still waiting.
Thank you, Barbara, very much. See you in the morning. Yeah, I was very grateful. I was very grateful we could connect, and I have some things I look forward to speaking about. We'll do in the morning. Thank you. Apologies, friends, for the delay. Apologies for the delay. We will begin. I'm just going to check in if Queen Mother isn't here, and then we will start. And I'll mention everybody who is present so that those on the phone can know who's gathered. And again, sorry for being a bit late. Nice to see the Gertian and Bernhardt. Andrew. So I'm just going to check in with Queen Mother.
Stuart, can you hear me? Stuart, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you. I do. I'm coming in just a moment. I'm calling Queen Mother. Thank you, Andrew.
Just a housekeeping note. We will be using the transcriber. So if at all possible, the people that are here need to have their names inserted. BK, can you hear me okay? BK?
Andrew, my apologies.
I'm sorry, my phone was
Say
off.
again,
Sorry,
Andrew, if you wish.
I can hear you. Yes, can hear you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Barbara. So friends, let us begin and we'll do the recording.
This meeting is being recorded.
Just a moment. Is the recording already on?
May I ask you what are you going to do with
Is
all
the
the
recording
recordings?
already on?
The recording has stopped.
I don't.
This meeting is being recorded.
Vito, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Vito, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Does anybody know if the recording is on?
Yes, it's on.
Says
Does anybody know if the recording is on? Can people hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
hear you. You don't hear me?
Okay. Can you hear us?
Bernhardt, you're on mute.
Do you hear me?
You're on mute.
I'm not on mute
Wait a
anymore.
minute.
No, I'm not.
No, that was my mistake. I'm sorry. My apologies. So, Vito, is the recording on?
Yes.
The recording is on, Stuart. It's on.
Still
Okay.
on. It's still on.
Okay.
May I ask you what are you recording for? What are you recording all this for?
For the angels
They don't need the recording.
and posterity and to keep a record. So apologies again for the delay, but let us begin. And let us begin with a verse. May our feelings penetrate into the center of our hearts and seek in love to unite ourselves with human beings seeking the same goal, with spirit beings who bearing grace, strengthening us from realms of light and illuminating our love, are gazing down upon our earnest, heartfelt striving. So, friends, I am no longer in Tuskegee, Alabama, where I was yesterday, but I'm in Montgomery, Alabama. And I'm staying with the granddaughter of the manager of the Montgomery bus lines. And for those who may know, the Montgomery bus lines was the scene for Rosa Parks' not giving up her seats, and for the onset of the civil rights movement. And my hostess, Barbara Bagley, her grandfather was a manager. And as she said as a little girl, when she would study their history books, she would turn the page and see her grandfather as a villain, as a scoundrel, the manager of the Montgomery bus lines that didn't allow Black people dignity to take a seat. And it always broke her heart because she knew the story was another. She knew actually that her grandfather tried to integrate the bus lines. And he was under so much pressure, that he had a heart attack. Are people with me? Can people hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Good. He had a heart attack. And Fito, if you can be visible, if it works, it's nice, as I've said, to see one another. Thank you. So her grandfather had a heart attack. And when he was in the hospital, he had given an order to integrate the bus lines. He had given an order, my hostess's grandfather, to integrate the bus lines. But when he went into the hospital with a heart attack because of all the pressure, they reversed his order. And he became the villain, the scoundrel. So there are nuances to these matters. This is by way of backdrop. Tomorrow I'm going to be going to the Lynching Museum. The Lynching Museum brings us to Andrew Williams Jr., who's with us, a center trustee, because Andrew is Black. And I wonder, Andrew, if you would share this very moving scene. Was it your grandfather or great-grandfather? I don't hear you, Andrew, if you're talking.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Yeah, I have a bit of a, well, anyway, inclement weather, so my internet connection is not strong. I'm Andrew Williams Jr. I was born in Macon, Georgia in 1958, April 24th. But it was on my 10th birthday when a very unfortunate accident or incident occurred. It was April 4th, 1968, on the assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, when the same woman from whom I'd been purchasing my comic books and newspapers for 5 years, I began reading quite early, told me that I would have to stop talking white and stop reading so much, or I'd end up dead like that nigger king. I was flabbergasted. I had no clue what this meant. But I explained to my mother. She came back and chastised the woman, and then we had the talk. The talk was not, in my case, the way to handle relations with the police, but the way to live my life, with the understanding that I was born here in the United States. However, my bloodline traces back to the original humans in what we now call Africa, at that time Al-Kebulon. But my birthright includes European, indigenous, and African descent. Now, 10 years old, my mother was not, quote, educated, but she was self-educated. And she explained to me very clearly that I was under threat because, unfortunately, at that time, African Americans, particularly males in the South, were at risk. And not at that time, but later she explained to me that my great-grandfather, who was a former slave that was living as a on a sharecropping operation For those who may not know, the sharecroppers were the intermediaries between the slaveholders and the Jim Crow South, whereas the tenants there lived, they didn't get paid money except what was left after their rent and also expenses were deducted. In a lot of cases, that meant a little money. A lot of cases, it was very much in debt. However, on the day when it was time to collect the little monies that were available, my great-grandfather, who had an indigenous wife who was ill and needed her medication, waited from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until late that night. There was still no money. And we asked for his money. He was lynched as an example. And consequently, my great-grandmother died because she was not able to get the medication she needed. So that's my personal story and history about lynching. And it had a lot to do with the fact that as soon as I was able to leave Georgia, I did so. I've been here in California since 1980. So I've spent most of my life here in California as opposed to Georgia. Do you
Folks, can you hear? Anybody hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
So I want to just repeat what Andrew has said, and that is his great-grandfather or grandfather was a sharecropper. And do you want to say
Yeah, I'm sorry, my internet is stable, but I was concluding
Go
and
ahead.
saying that's my experience with lynching, my personal experience.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say, Andrew, because these are matters that can hardly be heard. Was it your grandfather or your great-grandfather?
My great-grandfather.
So Andrew's great-grandfather was a sharecropper, and he had a sick wife, who I'm sure he loved, and he needed to be paid in order to get money for the medicine for her. And he went, as was accustomed, to receive his payment. And welcome, Nikki. And the person who owed him the money didn't come, left him waiting. Finally, and imagine if we were in this brother's position. Finally, he knocked on the door in desperation. And that led to him being lynched. And because he was lynched and didn't have the money and couldn't get the medicine, his wife died. So tomorrow I'll be going to
Yes, just one clarification. It's not that he was waiting for the person to pay him to come. The person was there all along. He just refused to address the waiting people to be paid.
Yeah. So I'm going to the lynching museum in Montgomery tomorrow, and I've been told that nobody goes there without being overcome by tears. Having had a fair bit of experience in this realm, what I've come to is a realization, thanks to the insights of friend Rudolf Steiner. Forgive them, Lord. They know not what they do, for they are not in their right and rightful minds. They're not in their right and rightful minds. So just to share, friends, where I am, we turn this evening to friend Rudolf Steiner, and I'd like to invite Bernhard to take the lead. Those who've gathered tonight, Bernhardt, were there for the prior calls. So we've heard from one another. So may I invite you and Steve. So with us, Steve, is Vito and Andrew Williams Jr., trustee who just spoke, and Nikki and Bernhardt at this point in time. So we are two or more who are gathered. So Bernhardt, the question we've been asking is, who is this friend, Rudolf Steiner? Can we speak of him as a friend? Matter of fact, if we don't speak of him as a friend, but as Dr. Steiner or a guru or the master, are we missing the point? So it'd be lovely if you were to share with us, to begin with, Bernhardt, if you will, how you came to this work and who I call friend Rudolf Steiner, who he has become and is for you.
Stuart, I have a question first. So could you give, or you can do it after I say something, but could you summarize what happened in the last few days when you had the gatherings? Do you have an overview? So to put forth different views, and so what was the outcome for you of the last gatherings? So I would like to know, but we can do that later, or
Yeah,
as you
let's do
see
that
fit.
later because there were 5 of them and there's a lot there.
Okay.
If that's okay, if we can do that later.
Okay. Yeah, so I came to Rudolf Steiner through a quest. Quest in the sense of I was looking for, whoops, got dark here. So I was looking for something different. I grew up in East Germany, for what you call East Germany here. So-called East Germany, which was behind the Ironic Curtain in Central Europe. And so what happened there was that I grew up there. So I lived there all my life during just before the wall went up, and then I left just before the wall went down. And then came the year after I came to America. And so I was in school, probably in school. So we had a better school system than you have. So in East Germany, we had a better school system than what is here in America right now, at least. And I think Midwest has a pretty good school system compared to other areas. In New York, does of course the East Coast is better off than other areas. But I think we had pretty good teachers, although many of the teachers were new teachers because teachers left the country early on. So the border was still open. And so especially teachers, because they felt the pressure of the Communist Party, so they left for West Germany while they could. The wall came up and then it was not possible anymore. People got shot at the border. So if they wanted to leave, we were told we had this anti-fascist protection wall around us. So that's what the story was for us inside of it. We were allowed to travel to the east and to the southeast. So it means so-called brother countries like Soviet Union, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Bulgaria, Romania, and so on. But we couldn't travel to the West. So only if you were retired, you could, because then the government didn't care if you stayed away. But I had early on, so the question in school, so why is it that if the teachers are right, why do they have to put pressure on us? Why do they get angry if we say something wrong? So there must be something wrong. But it took me a long, long time to wake up. It took me a long, 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 long time. And that was my luck in a certain way. So because that's why I was flying under the radar, I think. And I got to study. So usually if they would detect that you were critical of the system, you couldn't study. You were out. So you were not allowed to go to the university. So then I studied at the university, and I studied in the town where Dr. Steiner got his doctor degree in Rostock. And there I had this quest for so something different from what we were taught, Marxism, Leninism. So and then I found I found several people. So but my path went from one person. So I don't go into details, but led me towards Madame Blavatsky, from Madame Blavatsky to Steiner, and through Steiner, strangely enough, I could get the books to read in Rostock. Other friends of mine in East Germany said they were not allowed to get his books in the library. I could read them in the reading room of the university. And then I said, well, this is science. This now is science. When I read the first one was about Haeckel. So it was about the evolutionary scientist Haeckel, German. And so it was very impressive. And then so later on, there was a Christian community in East Germany, and that was very close already to the fall of the wall. And then, so I later joined the society here in America, and I left the society again because nobody seemed to be caring about the constitutional question really in the proper way. So there was this big, well, this goes too much into detail. But for the question you had, Stuart, was the question of friend. So if one can call Rudolf Steiner a friend or a guru. And I think, so this is the difficulty with anthroposophy, because there are all kinds of people and there are different levels and people call Rudolf Steiner all kinds of things. And some people are very critical of him and still think they are anthroposophists. They're doing their own anthroposophy. And but they forget that without Rudolf Steiner, we wouldn't have it. So he is, and plus if you go into it and you see how deep it is, it's a cosmos. So you're dealing with the cosmos. I didn't call him anything, really. I said he just is for me. So I found him, and then there he was. And that's how I see him. And it's not up, so considering the greatness of his work. So I have the same in a certain way with Thoreau and Emerson. So I feel so the greatness of their work is so big, so that if they would recognize me, so they could call me something, but I'm not calling them. I just feel in their atmosphere. So they have created this atmosphere, and I feel I'm part of that, and trying to take things in and trying to observe so how people relate to them and how people relate to each other within the sphere. That's about it. So how I see myself in relation to Rudolf Steiner.
Bernhard, thank you. Can you live into what's behind the question? And that is, and can you offer us any thoughts appreciating your own stand? We have this passage in the scripture where Christ says, call me not master, call me friend.
Right.
And Rudolf Steiner would begin all of his lectures by saying, dear friends.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout he would say, friends, friends, as though to say, are we together? Do you hear me? Are we united? So appreciating and knowing you, I can really say I appreciate what you've just stated of your own approach. But can you live in for a moment to this consideration? Can we grasp this individual's life work unless we grasp his life? And in this sense, befriend him, so to speak.
Yeah, so it's a good question, because so we are in one reading group on Zoom. So we are studying the autobiography, Rudolf Steiner's autobiography, which is a very profound work. And there you see already so his spheres, so the atmospheres in which he moved throughout his life. When he moved from Vienna to Weimar and from Weimar to Berlin, you can see that he intensely lived into the thinking of other people. So he was connecting himself very intensely and sensing his way into their realm. And he said, but there was hardly any interest in what I was doing. So he says over and over again, and in a certain way it comes through. So there was not on that level. Of course, people get very uneasy if somebody is greater than them, and also younger. It was interesting that Eduard von Hartmann, who was a philosopher, one of the best known philosophers in Germany at the time, that he actually annotated the philosophy of freedom and sent it back to Steiner. So, and he did not understand, he did not really understand that it was about the synthesis, but he analyzed the parts pretty well. So he saw the parts, but he was not willing to move. So what philosophers very often say of the 20th century is that, well, philosophy ended with Nietzsche. And this is unfortunately the case because, to some degree, because they ignored the philosophy of freedom. And so if you ignore the philosophy of freedom, you actually ignore a masterwork that actually would be crucial to understand, to see everything together. And but it's too big, and so they try to get to the point to which Steiner came through inner experience, to spiritual experience and deep understanding. So they try to come to it from the outside. And so I think, Stuart, in this sense, we find ourselves also in this situation. And because people are on different levels and come from different directions, and so one is grappling with this phenomenon. And it's very hard to say that I call him a friend. If he calls me a friend, I feel honored. But it is still, so like in East Germany, it was different. The upbringing was different from West Germany, for example, because so we always would be very, so we would honor the older people, so people who were older than us. So we would approach them cautiously and not brashly, or not even call them by the first name. So we would address them as Mr. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so. So we would not say Charlie or something like, or Hans, or so we would not easily, that had to be offered from the older person to us. So that was the difference. And then I lived in Denmark. I lived in Denmark and then I lived here. And so here it's very frank. So we call everybody by one's first name immediately almost. In Denmark, it also works also, but I had more of a sense for that in the Danish culture. So it made much of a sense. Here it is just the way it is done. Like you say, how are you, and don't expect an answer. So kind of.
Lovely. And would you say, Bernhardt, would it be accurate to say that you have befriended Rudolf Steiner? Would that be something you feel you could say?
I probably have disappointed him a lot.
Yeah. Good
So
answer.
I think yes, very much so. So for me, this is crucial. So it does not matter what the society says or what an individual tells me. So I have my inner connection to him. So I feel very connected, as I feel to Henry Thoreau. I feel very connected, although Thoreau would probably he would find many things ridiculous that I'm doing. So, but I see the profundity of his thinking and a guidance. So so a little bit of this what you said, Stuart. So the guru thing. It's not in the sense of a guru, but it's more in the sense of a guide. So you get outlines of how to tackle things sometimes, and then you see the expectations. You feel the expectations, and they are overwhelming somehow. But you can only do what you can do, and maybe try to improve yourself a little bit here and there, and listen to and look at other people's lives and how they are struggling with this question. So, yeah. What about you, Stuart? How do you see this?
Well, first, thank you, Bernhardt, for what you've offered. Thank you very much for the candidness and the straightforwardness. So, for some reason, I felt moved to follow his footsteps. I cannot explain why, other than Thoreau said, think with our hands. No, we Americans think with our feet. And Thoreau would be known, he'd walk through the woods, and without even looking down, he'd reach down and he'd pick up an arrowhead. So he had this connection, out of the will with the earth. But on my case, something moved me to follow friend Rudolf Steiner's footsteps through his life. And I think what it was a deep gratitude I felt to this friend. Because can people go on mute? There's a lot of background noise. If people can go on mute. There's a lot of background noise. If people can go on mute. Thank you. So as I shared a little bit this morning, in my early years, I'd be going through life and I would feel that something reached out and tapped me on the shoulder with a very decisive finger. And in those moments, I was stopped dead in my tracks. And I heard the words, "Don't forget me, I am there." And the intervals of those taps became shorter and shorter and shorter until it was, "Don't forget me, I, death, am you. I, death, am you." And it wasn't until I met Anthroposophy that I met the notion of the double or the shadow. And that was a pretty disconcerting experience for a young 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old to have, where I was literally stopped dead in my tracks. And for 5 or 10 minutes, I could hardly move. I was just overwhelmed by this feeling of this shadow, this veil that came over me. So that led me to search, to understand. And in time, I realized pretty early that the common schools didn't have the answers that I was looking for. And so I realized I'd have to find my own teachers. So I took up window washing to earn my tuition to go to Emerson College in England and Anthroposophical Institute. I had wonderful parents, but they didn't want to support me in such a work, so I took it on myself, and I spent the next years traveling and working in gardens and farms and homes for the handicapped, increasingly within the anthroposophical realm. And something led me then to follow his footsteps. I went to Kraljevec, where he was born, and I met with the owner of his home. Those who knew or knew of Dr. Benish. This was a man like Dr. Benish. He was a big farmer, big husky man, and yet gentle as a dove. And as we talked, and I think we had a translator, because I certainly didn't speak his Yugoslavian, and I don't suspect he spoke a lot of English, but he was going to sell the house for his children. But he had a dream, and he shared this with me, in which Rudolf Steiner came to him. And he knew nothing about Rudolf Steiner, but he knew this was somehow special, and he wanted to sell it. I went on to the Michael's Church, where he was taken, friend Rudolf Steiner, soon after he was born, because they didn't think he would survive, because of the loss of blood. I went to the elementary school and just followed my footsteps. We don't think as Americans with our head, we think with our feet. And I went to the elementary school, and for some reason it was open. And so but nobody was there. So some reason I went in. And I said, well, what do I do now? I'm in Rudolf Steiner's elementary school, or middle school, I should say, Wiener Neustadt. And I looked to my left, and there was a carved bust of Rudolf Steiner. And I went to his homes, the different places he lived, and followed his footsteps. I went into the train station where he speaks of in his autobiography, where he was sitting. I will read you the actual passage because he expresses it much better than I can, or drawing from his words. Just one moment, friends. I went to saw the factory he spoke about that he couldn't go into. That was a puzzle for him. All he saw was the products going in, the wooden products going in at one end, and they came out, the raw products, as benches and tables, but also what came out were the workers with dimmed eyes at the end of the workday, that something about what was happening in that factory for this young boy, it rendered those who were working there less than human. I went to the train station where in Noorddeuvel, where they lived. And let me see if I can find, I'm sorry to hold you up. I'd like to find friend Rudolf Steiner's own words here. Just one second. Here we are. Okay. So this is what he writes about.
What chapter is this? Which chapter is this? I got the book here.
Yeah, it's early on. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Thanks.
So I write, and most of this is taking his words. The child was a quiet boy, in part because from early on he was aware of realms about him that nobody else appeared to perceive. Ever present in his mind was the unexpected encounter in the train station in which his father worked. Sitting alone on a bench in the waiting room, through the door across the way, the unknown lady suddenly appeared. Bearing a striking family resemblance, she pleaded with heart-rending gestures for the child to help. Try to do all you can for me now and in times to come, he understood her to say, before she approached the stove in the corner of the station and disappeared into it. A foolish child you are, was his father's stern, impatient response. And I'm sorry, I should have this up so you all can see this while I'm reading. A foolish child you are, was his father's stern, impatient response to his son's searching report. The father's tone was to change a few days later when he received a letter reporting the suicide of his wife's sister. An important lesson the child had learned, one that would constitute a turning point in his inner life. After the encounter in the train station, he understood, quote, how one lives in worlds of the spirit. As a result, his experience of the natural world around him became more intimate. The realms of the spirit revealed themselves ever more fully to his awakening soul. And on, I went to the university, the MIT of the day in Vienna, where he went. And again, I was just led by my feet, so to speak. And I read enough about his time there that I found my way to where he took courses. And I just went into those rooms, these large, high-ceiling rooms, this great institute in Vienna, and just lingered with him in spirit. In Weimar, Bernhardt, I put my back to the front door of the 3 apartments in which he lived, and I followed his footsteps to the archives. And on. In Berlin, I found the intersection where one evening he had a drink or two to dissipate the old atavistic clairvoyance, and it described in letters that he and a friend on their way home, they lay down in the middle of the intersection in this great boulevard and looked up at the stars, and on to where he lay down his head and offered up his spirit in Dornach, where I lived for a year. And I will conclude and invite others' comments, including Bill Bloom, who's joined us, by reading from the beginning of this tale. Can people see this in the screen share? Okay.
Yes.
I'm not hearing, I'm sorry. Hello?
We say
Okay.
sweet potatoes, brown rice, and more to satisfy even the most particular
Have a lot of
palates.
background noise. There's a lot of background. Thank you.
Without sage, chicken fingers, sauteed
Can
onions,
people go on mute? Can people go on mute? Can people go on mute, please? There's a lot of background noise. Queen Mother, can you go on mute? There's a lot of background noise.
She just did.
Thank you.
Stuart, could you send this to me? This here?
I can. I'd be glad to.
Yeah. Thank you.
But friends, we still have background noise. Can everybody please go on mute when you're not speaking? Thank you. Thank you. So I want to just end in response to Bernhardt's question and open it up for other comments. So this is a tale, and this tale arose, Bernhardt, as you may have heard in an earlier conversation, on the evening the night before I met Marjorie Spock, who was the last person on the earth who worked with Rudolf Steiner. I had a dream that night, and in the dream, I found myself saying to friend Rudolf Steiner, "How can I help, friend? Just tell me I want to help." And this was the answer, this tale. And I'll just read I'll read this two passages. They're short, and then we'll open it up. So here's the title, A Friend, a Tale. I may just take my name away, that's not important. And then we have this passage from the scriptures. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Ye are my friends, if ye do whatsoever I command you. Henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knoweth not what his Lord doeth, but I've called you friends. For all things that I've heard of my Father, I've made known unto you. Ye have not chosen me, but I've chosen you and ordained you, that ye should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatsoever ye shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, that ye love one another. So the passage, I said I followed his footsteps from where he was born to where he died. And this is the image of his death, of closing his own eyes. And then we'll open it up for other comments. Shining, light-filled, his eyes were directed into worlds with which he was in vision united. As he offered up his last breath, he lifted his hand and closed his eyes. In that moment, the room was filled not with the experience of an end, but rather with that of a most sublime, living, unfolding deed. An exalted, transfigured wakefulness spoke out of his countenance, out of the praying strength of his still folded hands. As the great artists of the Middle Ages bequeathed to the pictures of the knights, resting upon the stone sarcophagus or the grave, the appearance that their closed eyes were still beholding, their reposing forms strove forward. So the figure resting before us bore witness. This is friend Rudolf Steiner, who's just closed his own eyes, bore witness to a super-sensible wakefulness, a striding forth into the spheres of the spirit. So,
Thank you.
yeah, comments, friends, not necessarily on just what I've said, but on this friend. Whatever comes to mind are most welcome, and those who are on mute need to come off mute. Any comments are most welcome. Are you there, Bill? Can you hear us?
Oh, sorry.
Are you there, Bill?
Can you hear me?
Now we do. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I don't have good reception, and the weather is impossible for me to go back out. I just don't want to do it.
Well, we had him a moment ago. Now we've lost him. But any comments on what's been shared, friends? There you are, Bill. Bill, we can hear you if you want to stay with us. I can hear you at least. So once again, friends, anybody feel free to come off mute and offer any thoughts you may have.
Sir, very high risk of another attack. Reduce risk factors. His recommended LDL-C level should be
There's a
below
lot of
55.
background noise. There's a lot of background noise.
Heartdisease.com.
There's a lot of background noise. Okay, thank you. Green Mother, any thoughts from your side? Every day you come to know this friend more closely. Anything arises from your side?
Well, really, that part of a friend, a tale, is very fascinating to me. I'm very close connected with that because for me, it's a child that is an unusual child that is having visions. But the people that he's around, even his family, does not understand him and does not understand what he's trying to relate to them, that he's seeing as well as the things that he's feeling. And it also carries me back to the biblical days of David and Jonathan. You know, no greater friends than those two characters in the Bible, because Jonathan was a great friend to King David during his time of peril when he was running for his life. I think that's where the song come from. I'm running, I'm running, I'm running for Jesus, you know. So many things come to my mind, and more especially with the vision that he had of the woman that comes into the train station. And she tells him not to forget about her. This is the beginning of a strong relationship with him and his connection with outer realm. I think that was probably maybe not the beginning, but a strong part of the beginning of his life, when he understood that he did have this unusual connection to the other side, because he was being told what was going to happen, and when he tried to relay it, nobody wanted to hear it. But then after the deed was done, they all understood what he was trying to say. And they call you foolish when you are able to see things of that sort happening, and you begin to relay it to people. When God allow you to foresee things that are coming, and you go to people and tell them, well, I saw this, that, or the other and they'll say, well, you must be crazy. Where you get that from? What make you think that? Well, he plans to tell you, you didn't choose me, I chose you. So if God chooses you and began to equate to you in such a manner that you have that kind of connection with him, you have no control over it. You have to learn how to try to manage it in order that it doesn't run you crazy or destroy you. All of my life, I've dealt with this situation. And you know, it's surprising as I read on into this tale that you have spawned. It was surprisingly, as I got into it, connection that he felt with the earth. You know, he became very connected to the earth. And he learned how to deal with the situation around him in order to survive. Because that's what life is all about, surviving. We have to survive. And what mechanism do we choose to survive? How do we prepare ourselves to survive? Through some of this tale that has been told, it seemed to me that at times when he would take a retrospective view back and look at some of the things that had just passed that he had the connection with and had saw, but he used it for the better good as he went forward, because it's always about striving and going forward, not looking back.
Thank you, Bernice. Thank you. Excuse me, friends.
But I have my copy and I'm still going through it. I haven't quite finished it.
Wonderful. Well, when I'm there, hopefully tomorrow, if it works, I'll be reading it to you out loud. But imagine, friends, now this young boy isn't seeing his aunt appearing, who's passed away, but now he's seeing, as he put it, that if education doesn't change and find the spirit, I'm putting this in simple terms, now he sees what he says is going to happen. And that is, I believe it was 3 decades, Europe will be in ruins. Imagine if you had the capacity to see that, to see the death of millions and the suffering, if you lived with that every single day. Imagine the burden and the responsibility that that represents. And that's what he said. If education doesn't find the human spirit in I think it was 3 decades, Europe will lie in ruins. And that's exactly what happened. So to understand this friend, we can journey on from his vision of his aunt, his deceased aunt, to what he saw coming in Europe, and much, much, much more. Bernhard, you're on. Go ahead, Bernhard.
Yeah, one has to also see that. So Rudolf Steiner, he said that he was living much more. For him, the realities of the spiritual world were more profound and more understandable than the physical world around him. Yet he had to overcome. He had to overcome this seeing of his. He said so it was atavistic seeing, so old-fashioned seeing. He had to overcome it and go through philosophy in order to get to make thinking in his organ for seeing. So he developed a new way of seeing, but he had to overcome. He had to put the old seeing aside, and and also he stopped talking to other people about it when he was a child. So because he realized, especially the event that you mentioned, probably helped him to realize that exactly what Queen Mother was saying, so everybody around him doesn't take him seriously about these things, although they learned then because his aunt had died, committed suicide, but still it doesn't stick with people. So they're very uncomfortable if they have somebody there who sees more or who understands more. This is the other thing. So the other thing is if you understand more, so it's the same thing. So because our society has now this warfare against reason, this warfare against thinking, and so it's all going into utilizing this kind of, one should feel, and also this egalitarianism to kind of numb down so the development of the individual in a certain way. That means not an individual that is useful so that because there are many bright and smart people who function within the system, but an individual that can stand as an individual and also say things that are not really convenient to say, so that will actually challenge what's going on in society on whatever level. But there should be discussion. So that is important. So now even discussion has been undermined. So that discussion doesn't take place because they have set up all these barriers, that you have all these terms and you have to almost kowtow before a certain terminology. And so if you don't speak the right words, then you are already, so nobody understands you anymore. And that's why you have also many experts. So all this expertism has led to an atomization. So the society has become atomized in a certain way. And it's very difficult to communicate, even amongst the experts, because somebody's an expert for this, an expert for that, and there's so many experts. It's sprouting out, and they can kind of communicate. But then you need the facilitator, and the facilitator comes in, and he might be a great person, or he might not be. So
That's why we speak of a consecrated common sense. Anthroposophy being a consecrated common sense. Queen Mother, you had a comment to offer.
Yes, I was just thinking about, the thing of it is, I guess when I talk too much about, I think about the experience that I've gone through in these 87 years, and I'm taking a retrospective view, looking back now as to what happened during those period of times when all of this was going on, similar in my mind and in my life. I find yourself alone, because people don't really understand you, and it kind of isolates you, or you kind of isolate yourself because you realize they don't understand you, that you are different in a perspective way than they are, that your thinking is different, and what God allows you to see, you see it coming to fruition. I've lived to see things that I predicted years ago. I've lived to see it come to fruition. And those people that I shared it with back then, they have lived to see it, all witness it coming into fruition. And it gives you odd feeling when God gives us some difficult jobs sometimes, in spite of what folks think. We have some difficult decisions to make sometimes, he will call you to do, because he said he chose you. And when he has chosen you to do something, and you say, well, if I do that, they ain't gonna like me. If I do that, this is gonna upset somebody. If I do that, such and such a thing is going to happen. You know this. Because God done already laid it out for you. For me, he lays it out step by step. And if God lays something out for me and I'm commanded to go and deal with it, I wrestle with my mind as how it's going to affect the people that I have to contact to deal with. Because many times when you tell them, well, this, and that, they look at you and say, are you crazy? How do you know? You ain't God. And they are right. In their sense, you're not God. But God has commissioned you. And when he commissioned you, he prepares you. When he prepares you, you have to do it. And it happens just exactly like that. And sometimes people get very upset with you because you foretold them what was going to happen. It happened, and they did not heed the warning, and it was devastating. I've had a couple of people that was really, really upset with me because the consequences for what they did was devastating. But had they listened, they would not have been. And I tell people all the time, I would heap rather for you to tell me that something is going to happen than to say, well, I could have told you. I could have told you. If you had told me, maybe I would have had a chance to make a different decision, and the consequences would have been less devastating, and I could have spared somebody some heartache, pain, or whatever. But like Steiner, this thing will eat you. That's why you have people commit suicide. They can't deal with it. They just cannot deal with the visions that they see. They don't know how to handle them. And they don't know how to go to God and ask him to help them to handle it. That's what I have to do. And even in your own family, sometimes God will show you something that's going to happen in your own family. You don't want it to happen. And you may go and pre-warn them. And they do not take heed, and it still happens. Well, you still have to go through that suffering, that sorrow, or that shame, or that whatever. It's a part of life living, but it also tells us that there's a higher being than we are, in spite of what some folks want to say. God already knows what's going to happen. And sometimes he's gracious enough to allow us to have a pre-warning in order to avert devastating circumstances. And we won't hear. Our country is in bad shape. My soul cries for my country right now because it's going to hell in a handbag.
Yep.
We're tumbling downhill.
Yep.
We need rescuing. We need God to step in and stop the erosion. Now, when he steps in to stop the erosion, sometimes it's devastating circumstances behind it. I understand that.
Thank you, Queen Mother. Thank you. Thank you. Other comments? Andrew, Nikki, Vito.
Well, you know where I'm going with this. But what I heard since I came on, and I'm sorry I'm late, but I got busy with other things. But the thing is that we all have a calling. When we're born, we have, and right there in the Declaration of Independence, what we usually hear spoken about. And first of all, let me go back to when BK, I can't pronounce your name.
Bernhardt was talking.
Yeah, Bernhardt.
Where my mind was going was character. You know, character is what we do when nobody else is looking. And that builds character. So that's pretty much our being, our endowed being. We're doing what is correct with our endowed being when we build character. So, and that goes along, of course, with what Bernice is saying. So the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. But here, now, in this day and age, in our current course of human events, we have to have a license or certificate of completion or this, that, or the other thing in order to do something. But remember Jonah, right? He was told to go and do something. What did he do? He didn't go, but he went finally and did it. Some go kicking and screaming. I know that I was, a little bit like that. And some go willingly. It's a matter of getting it through to people that, the framers of that, not framers, but those who penned that first paragraph and the beginning of the Declaration of Independence, they seem to have incredible knowledge. When in the course of human events, we're there now, it becomes necessary for one people, a unified people, which I see that you guys are doing. You're doing it really well. Two, put a number one there. You're going to put a number 1, 2, 3. Number one, dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. You got to have this license for this, a certificate for that, and you can't do this. You got zoning ordinances. Got to get rid of them. All right. Dissolve the political bands. And then number 2 is to assume amongst the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle you, based on your endowment, what he gave you as your innate abilities. And it goes on to say, however, have a decent respect for the opinions of mankind, and you're bringing it together, declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So keep up the good work. I yield.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you.
Oh, Nikki, I tell you what, you feel my soul.
Thank you, Nikki. Andrew.
Yeah, I tell you what, I can sit in class all day.
Andrew, Vito, any comments?
Actually, I'm supposed to be at a meeting tomorrow, and I think I'm supposed to do a class on what I just said and going back to the beginning and about America and for whom it was created. Okay.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
We as a people, we don't talk about our inalienable rights enough. We always talking about these laws and rules of laws that are governed by man, we forget that when God made this earth and he put us here, he gave us some inalienable rights with a commandment to subdue this earth.
Yep.
Subdue it.
Exactly.
And if you take care, go ahead on, Nikki. You start to say that, go ahead on.
I'm sorry, say that again.
You start to say something.
Oh, no, unalienable, though. You can't put a lien on it. Something that was given to you by your creator.
Yeah, and and some things are worth dying for. And I always believed that my inalienable rights was one of those things that was worth me giving my life for.
Yes, yes, indeed. And one has to have that conviction, has to have that conviction. Otherwise, we spend most of our life reacting as opposed to being proactive. Andrew Fito, any comments from your sides?
Only words of appreciation. I am in a kind of a loud place, but I appreciate the sentiment shared. Perhaps before we leave, I'll be able to participate a little bit better.
Thank you, Andrew. Fito, anything from your side? Our young hero in Haiti.
Not really. I don't have any comment exactly. So I just hear everything from you. So thank you.
So
Well, I do have one comment, Stuart, and that's a housekeeping note. Today earlier we had part one of today's session, and today is part two. Stuart, as we go forward, did we decide we're going to do this at the same time every day now, or are we going to do it at any other time?
what we've come to out of conversations, and this is on an email that's gone out tonight to everybody, is we will gather at 9 a.m. in the morning Eastern time and 9 p.m. in the evening Eastern time. So that, it's impossible to find the time that works for all. But out of conversations, we've concluded that we will gather at 9 a.m. Eastern time in the morning. Now hang on a minute. Let me make sure. Yeah, I think we did. Didn't we not come to that, Andrew?
Yes.
9 a.m. Eastern time and 9 p.m. Eastern time in the evening.
Correct. Just want to confirm that.
Yeah. So that is the schedule that we will be on. And
schedule, how many days are we going forward from today?
Well, we may go, there's a lot of people who have offerings to bring. We may go to friend Rudolf Steiner's birthday, which is March 25th. So we have,
Well, in that regard, I would ask the input from yourself and others here if we might expand what we're doing, because Stuart, as you know, this 2025 is the precursor to 2026, which is our 250th anniversary of the United States. But it seems to me, Stuart, that it will be very important to allow other people to attend if they so choose. Is it possible to create a flyer or an introduction or a way to invite those that may want to attend, or is that something that we're not ready for yet?
we have that, and I will show you the link. What we could use is to broadcast this to wider circles. And I say that, friends, if I may say, looking at each one
Well,
of you.
in that regard, now I do have an account that will allow me to broadcast to other mediums, but that would mean that I would have to host the upcoming events, and that's part of the reason I'm having this conversation. If that's something you want to do, then I can make plans for that time, and that would enable us, I think, to build momentum as we go forward.
Andrew, thank you very much. So let's do this. Let's finish this evening up, and then let's address, you and I can address those logistics, and anybody who has any comments can also offer them as well. But the main thing, friends, is that we get the word out. All of you know people, others, thoughtful people, and if you think this would be of interest, please feel free to share it. That's how things unfold. Yeah.
May I suggest so that if you plan on putting this out for broader public, so to create some blocks of interest, because so we have topics that are widespread and not everybody is always up to date or really interested in all the issues, and then maybe have some blocks that create bridges between the blocks where you have one and then the other offering, and then you can make people meet. Because I found it really sad that there were presentations of Anthroposophists, a group from the East Coast and a group from California, and they didn't really meet. It would have been nice if they had discussed their experience, because they were very intense experiences, and if we would have had an exchange between them. And so the bridge building is there, and also that this focus on interest is a little bit there. So just a suggestion. I don't know what you think about.
Yeah, we will have, in about a week's time, we have our calendar set up. We'll have in about a week's time an overview, which is currently, Andrew, if you go to our website and if you go to educational programs, and if under educational programs you go to the 2025 All-American Epiphany Convocation, you'll see a flyer and an overview of the whole event and the different audiences that we're addressing. Those audiences are members of the Anthroposophical Society,
Okay.
our friends, fellow Michaelites, interested citizens, prisoners, veterans whose service has been murder and war and are looking for a resurrection wisdom, kith and kin who wonder, what are we doing with this unwieldy word anthroposophy, and those on the other side of the threshold. So all of this is spelled out. I encourage you, Andrew, to have a look under the center's website, under educational programs, under 2025 All-American Epiphany Convocation. But let us do this. Let's wrap this up, staying with friend Rudolf Steiner. I want to read a little bit more from a friend. Then we'll invite Queen Mother to offer concluding words. And then those who wish to stay and discuss some of the details can do so. So hang on one moment. Let me bring this up here. And Bernhard, I sent you the beginning of this piece, a friend, via email, and there's more to come, which I'd be glad to share with you if and when you wish.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to read on just a little bit more from where we read this morning. Once upon a time, not so long ago, in a land far away, there lived a hunter true of eye. The hunter had pledged his service to his count until one day his glance fell upon a young maiden who, like him, had entered into the count's employ. A glimmer touched the maiden, stirring the hunter's heart. He determined to ask his patron for her hand. It was not granted. Upon receiving the Count's refusal, the flame of love that had kindled the hunter's heart was quickened by an unexpected breath, the breath of freedom. Now this, friends, are Rudolf Steiner's parents, and this is true. What I'm reading is true. The hunter gazed into his Count's eyes and then turned and sought out the maiden. Together they spoke, and out of their hearts arose the resolve to leave the employ of their patron and make their way together out into the world. They set forth, the hunter true of eye and his young bride, leaving behind their beloved forest ground. The young couple's journey led them to a distant land at the crossroad of civilizations, where in earlier ages many a knight had met in battle. Memories of one encounter, and Queen Mother and Nikki and everybody, this encounter was Rudolf Steiner in an earlier lifetime. Memories of one encounter in particular lingered in the air, bearing an image of the fallen knight cradled in his beloved's lap beneath the unfolding boughs of a tree. So there was, with the knight Shio Natalandur, there was a moment not far from where he would be reborn, where he had died cradled in the lap of his beloved, beneath the unfolding boughs of a tree. In that faraway land, the couples established a home. In time, a child was born with a rising sun. In the hours following the infant's birth, his breaths were uncertain. Anxiously, the parents bound their newborn in blankets and bore him through the still winter night to the neighboring church, dedicated to the Archangel Michael, to be christened, the last consecrated act on this earthly plane, if it was destined to be. It was not. The breath of life quickened the infant soul. The father had become a station master. The mother lovingly gave herself to the care of the young child and home. They were a simple family of modest means. In the center of this distant land where they settled, a great granite mountain, the Geschriebenen Stein, rose up out of the sunlit landscape. From the summit of the mountain, a magnificent panorama extended in all directions. To the west, the Alps rose into view. To the east, the vast plains of the Putzta filled the horizon. Northward, colossal stones marked the Druid center to which the famed Gilgamesh set forth from his home in Mesopotamia in order to become initiated in the ancient mysteries. And to the south, two rivers joined their currents to form a peninsula. Thereupon, the king's village was settled, home to the child. The legends of the land were many that the elders of the village shared. In earlier times, a neighboring castle, Gandine, had been the seat of the ancestors of the Grail King Parsifal. His son Lohengrin, pledged to the Order of the Swan, was said to have guarded the Holy Grail until upon Lohengrin's death, the blessed chalice was taken up again into the heavenly realms. There it was safeguarded under the care of the great Celtic archangel, and those human souls who, due to their devotion to the Grail during their lives on earth, were upon their death chosen as guardians among the ranks of the heavenly host. On high, they were said to inspire their fellow knights on earth. So legend had it. In the last section for this evening, modest were the circumstances into which the child was born, far from his parents' forest home. Newcomers in the village, the young couple had few friends. Accordingly, they were all the more sensitive about the cries of the babe, which, despite Its mother's loving ministrations were heard well into the night. Through the room of their small home, the mother bore the infant, seeking to soothe her newborn babe in her arms. Pausing by the candle on the windowsill, she glanced out into the night. Luminous snowflakes, snow stars in her native language filled the air, etching their crystalline forms on the window panes of a lone winter home. Through the homelessness that the young mother herself experienced, did she sense the painstaking struggle of her child's spirit as it too sought to infuse and inhabit its mortal frame. So let us draw this to a conclusion. And Queen Mother, might we invite you to offer some concluding prayers, and then we can touch on some details. And I'll just make a note. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Time and 9 p.m., we will take up the question, are we working, working with anthroposophy or anthroposophia? Are we striving with anthroposophy or anthroposophia? That's what we'll turn to for the next 3 days. So, Queen Mother, if you wish to offer a concluding prayer.
Thank you, Brother Stewart. As we come to the close for this afternoon, may we clear our minds, may we bow our head. Most holy and righteous God, we come before the throne of mercy, and we lie prostrate before thee, knowing that you know our inner hearts. For it was you who have made us, formed us, put us into this world to do thy work. Now, Lord, fill us with your spirit. Engulf us that we may continue to do your will in accordance to the way that you would have it done. Lead and guide us, protect us, and keep us together as one unit, whereby we share our thoughts, our education, and our mercy and grace for each other in times of trials, tribulations, and trouble. For we are in trying times now. So we ask you to open the doors, accept your children into your care. Keep us under the billows of thy wings, that you may lead us and guide us the way that you would have us to go, as we pray. Amen.
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 So any logistics, friends, that anybody wishes to touch on as we proceed in this work? Well, let us do this. We can always be in touch. Thank you for gathering this evening with his friend Rudolf Steiner. Thank you, everyone, for what you shared. We are two or more who've gathered in his name. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Fito. Thank you, Bernice. Thank you, Bernhardt and Andrew. Bernhardt, something from your side.
Just very short. So the one difference, so when you ask the question about a friend, there's a big difference between so us in Germany and you here in America. This is here it is expected to say to somebody, I love you. In Germany, it is inherent. So it's understood. We don't say it. We just don't say it. We don't say it so much. So we just show it somehow.
Good.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, at least it was like this in the East very much so. So we would not constantly say it. This was more so it was like when you put it in as a word, so it very often becomes cheap. So so you keep the most, like you're not supposed to say the name of God. So that was a rule in the Old Testament. So you have to keep it back. You shouldn't speak it freely. So you don't speak freely. So that was behind it. I'm not saying that this is wrong or that is right. This is not the point. It was just done differently. So
were you going to say something in response, Queen Mother?
I'm trying to correlate what he's saying, the difference between, but it does that sometimes, I guess, when there are words, and you can put a word, you can speak it one way and it will mean one thing, and then speak it in another realm and it means another thing. But trying to get the understanding of both sides of it to make it flow where it becomes united is what we have to do, is what we struggle with as humans.
I think, Bernhard, what you're touching on is a reality in this circle. And that is, as Steve Berman has commented, friend Rudolf Steiner spoke of two Michael streams. One of them, path of knowledge from Europe, the other, the path of devotion or the Gospels here in America.
The recording has stopped.
So I think that's what's the exciting thing about this cast of characters. We had a lovely evening last night with another Black brother. It was beautiful, very, very rich. And so we see all of the genius of the different peoples and the different sensibilities and the different qualities.
In that
Learning
regard,
to
Stuart,
accept. I'm sorry, Prince, go ahead on.
in that regard, Stuart, is it possible for us to access yesterday's recording, or is it available, or can we make it available for those that were not able to attend or participate?
Yes,
I'd like that.
if people
I'd like to have a transcript of it.
if people will contact Fito, he's copied on all the emails. He can send you those. And Queen Mother, when I come tomorrow, if it works, I'm going to bring you Guy's website where there's a lot of information. A lot of information. I'm also going to show you the Anthroposophical website where you can download and print out every single lecture and book. That would save you a lot of money in having to travel and gasoline and so on and so forth. So we will go over that.
Well, love to
Well, I
all.
appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
Love to have another appointment now, but I look forward to picking this thread up. Stuart, I'll follow up with you later this evening about the Philippines project, and let's talk about logistics for planning for the rest of these sessions. I'd like to do what we can to spread the word in advance so we can build momentum as we go forward.
Wonderful. Thank you, Andrew. If we can speak sooner rather than later about the Philippines and these other matters, I'm going to be trying to get some sleep tonight for a change.
Okay, let's say about 30 minutes, if that's okay with you.
That's fine. I'll wait for your call.
All right, thank you so much.
Good.
Goodbye, everyone. Love you all.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good seeing you.
All right, Auf Wiedersehen.
Take care.
Wiedersehen. Ja,
Take
tschüss.
care. That was Andrew's. I love you all, and that's Andrew. That's really Andrew.
Yeah, that's him. I love Prince.
Yeah. Yeah. Bernhard, thank you
So-
for what you brought, and we're looking forward to you speaking
you.
about you and hopefully Regina and some others speaking about the German-American connection.
Yes. And I hope to hear more so about transcendentalism also.
Yes, we'll have that as well.
Okay. Thank
Good
you.
friends, rest well, rest well. And Queen Mother, is it okay if I knock on your door tomorrow evening?
Yes.
Good. I'm looking very much forward.
Aloha.
From Nikki to Queen Mother. Thank you. Rest
Yes,
well.
dobranoc. That's Slovak for good night.
Thank you. Rest well.
Yahweh bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you.